At a time when other states are adopting new voting restrictions, California is making it easier for people to participate in their democracy. The state's online voter registration website now includes 8 additional languages, and access has been improved for people with disabilities. Joining me to talk about the changes are Lori Schellenberger, director of the ACLU's California Voting Rights Project, and Chris Wilson, director of civic engagement for Alliance San Diego. Lori, the additional languages include Hindi, Tagalog, Japanese. How important was it to add these languages?
Well, what most people don't realize is that in California, the fastest growing population is the Asian American population, and that there are more than 1 million Asian Americans who aren't as comfortable in English as they are in their native language. So by expanding online registration, which in 2012 launched in English and Spanish, we've made it accessible to a vast number of Californians who otherwise didn't have the convenience.
So you mentioned about 1 million people, but realistically speaking, how many more people do you expect to add to voter registration rolls through these changes?
It will be interesting to see, because in 2012, when online registration launched, 500,000 people registered in a 3-week period before the presidential election. So I'm imagining there will be a little bit of a surge, but it's hard to predict the actual number and the increase itself. But I think that you'll see that by making it easier for people to register, or people who update their registration, because when you move, you have to re-register to vote. So a significant number will be in that category as well. But I think that we will see an increase in registration, which would be good for the state, because California ranks 45th in the country in our voter registration rate, and an estimated 8.5 million Californians are eligible to vote but not registered. So we hope we make a dent in that number.
So Chris, voter registration is only part of the equation. What effect do you expect this to have on actual voter turnout?
Well, we know that registration is the first step to voting, and we think that it will have an effect on turnout, but we know that the registration is not where the journey ends. We know that we still need to contact these voters, we need to educate them and talk about the process of voting, in addition to what's on the ballot and how it impacts the communities that they live in and that we serve.
And we here in San Diego have really seen that. We recently had a mayoral election. People had the chance to elect the first Latino mayor, and yet Latinos' turnout in the most recent election was pretty dismal. So why is that?
Well, first I'd like to make a correction on how, or change the lens on how we view the Latino turnout in the special. Latinos, when you look at the drop-off from the 2012 election, the average drop-off was about 40%, and the Latino drop-off came in at about 36 or 37%. So looking at it that way, Latinos held their own in the special election. Generally speaking about turnout, though, we know that we do need to do more in order to motivate people to have a voice in the electing our officials and the ballot propositions that we see. But that means we have to go to them in language. We have to go to them in the language that they speak, which is why the voter registration being translated into 8 more languages is very effective. We also have to talk to them about how the issues and the things on the ballot impact them directly in their everyday life. We find that to be a great motivator and very effective at turning people out.
So outside of language, what do you think is a big barrier to getting a lot of minorities out to the polls?
I think that our election system is still pretty inaccessible to a lot of people, and probably in particular to new Americans who may not have voted before. We could do a lot to improve our civic education in this country, and from a young age start introducing our children to the importance of our democracy. We talk about it a lot, but I think we don't put enough emphasis on participation, or even on the mechanics of what it means to register and get a ballot in the mail and get a voter information guide. Those things come in the mail, and I don't think anyone knows what to make of them sometimes. So we could do a better job as a state, I think as a country, in committing resources to educating voters.
Okay, and back to the nitty-gritty of language. I know that Covered California, the state's health insurance marketplace, had some issues with its translations on its website. How certain are you that people who access the different languages on the voter registration website will actually be able to understand?
The Secretary of State was very open in the process of developing the language capacity. So the translations were reviewed by community members. There was a lot of feedback provided, and before the system launched, it was beta tested by community members in those language communities. So I think the advocates are very confident that the system is going to function really well.
And we're going to close it there. Lori, Chris, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.